Hey there, welcome to Music Worth Buying. My name is TJR, and here with me is
Robert Kinsler.
Yours
truly.
There we go. And so we're here to discuss, I don't know if we're really here to review it so much.
Yeah, just talk about it.
As we're here to discuss the CD release by the Beatles, 8 Days a Week, companion piece to the Ron Howard film. And let's just, we're just going to talk about this album.
Yeah,
we both listened to it. We're both big Beatle fans.
Big Beatles fans. So.
And, it almost feels like reviewing this is almost unnecessary because, if you're a fan of the Beatles, you're getting it.
Yeah.
They
already have it by now, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you have it by now. And we're not, if you're a newbie, I wouldn't recommend this if you're a newbie, would you?
I would, but somewhere down the line. I mean, you're going to start
later.
out. Yeah, later.
Yeah.
You're going to first start out with, like
the albums.
Yeah, the albums. Yeah.
So I'm not going to recommend it to newbies.
Yeah.
But let's just talk about this here.
Yeah.
And so let's get a little bit of background about this here. Now, first of all, the first thing that hit me was I wondered to myself, is this a re-release of the vinyl release back in the 70s?
So you're right, it came out in
The
1977.
Beatles Live at the Hollywood Bowl.
Right.
And is this a re-release of that?
Well, it references that. I mean, some of these tracks are the same, but apparently, according to the liner notes, or at least to the press release that I was sent, this was actually a situation where they went back and found the original 3-track recordings, which apparently weren't used when they did the vinyl album. So as a result, Giles Martin, and don't want to mess up the name here, but Giles Martin worked with, who's the son of George Martin, the Beatles producer, and he worked with Sam Okell, who's a Grammy Award-winning engineer. They went and actually remastered those, and there's actually 4 bonus tracks that weren't on the original album, and they sound fantastic. I mean, when I listened to the original vinyl album, I mean, the screams were literally like in there with the music, so it was almost unlistenable. I mean, other than as a curiosity, it'd be like if you snuck in a little cassette recorder back in the day, recorded it. I mean, it was almost to the point like, yeah, you could hear that it was the Beatles and stuff, but it wasn't a great, warm listening experience. This, on the other hand, you really hear the musicianship. You hear their voices. You hear Ringo's drum kit, which is, to me, every time you actually can really hear Ringo, it's such a revelation how musical he was and essential to this band. And you get the excitement of what the Beatles were like in that time. And I think, that this was a groundbreaking band that, they had this popular support, but they were also had these amazing songs that they wrote, and also the ones that they covered and made better, So just a wonderful, wonderful album, I think.
Okay, and now I never got to hear that original vinyl release. That's one vinyl album I've never had a chance to hear. Sounds like I don't need to hear it.
Yeah, I'd say you'd hear it once, and then you probably wouldn't listen to it again.
It's just a curiosity. Yeah, if you weren't there. And now, so you're saying what the original vinyl release? Do we know what that was taken from? If it wasn't,
I don't recall offhand. I don't know if the liner notes really went into that. They did make reference to this 3-track recording, and
which they didn't have access to prior.
They did, and also they said that the technology now is such that they can really. It sounds like that they can separate the screams, at least via these tracks, from the Beatles' performances on the disc, so they can mix it in. I mean, the screams are there, especially between. But like, for example, when John Kinnelly talks about Help, and he says, "Oh, we had 2 movies. We had the black and white one, Hard Day's Night. And it's like." It sounds like it was recorded this week. It sounds so great, but it doesn't sound like it's been distorted or electronically altered. The recording is warm and rich, and like I said, this is, I know probably most Beatles fans are as excited as I am, and you are on hearing this.
And I think that when we talk about screams, we should, just in case anybody doesn't know what we mean by that, is during that time, if you went to, when the Beatles did play in concert, they were greeted by non-stop screaming, mostly from female fans who just wouldn't stop screaming while they were performing. And maybe one girl would stop for a few moments, but another girl would pick up, and they were so excited that they just would scream non-stop. And of course, I've read the interviews where, the individual Beatles would say, like, the screaming was so loud and so deafening because it would be, the entire audience. That oftentimes they felt they couldn't hear themselves. They couldn't tell what they were playing. And this is before, I think this was, like I said, this is in the early days of rock and roll, where nowadays we have on-stage monitors, and we have these great sound systems, but they were just going out there with just a standard PA not having the kind of monitor system we have now.
Yeah, I heard it wasn't until the late 60s after the Beatles stopped touring that the sound systems did get a little bit better, the PA system, so the bands could hear themselves, and you could have like the Led Zeppelins of the world go out there and really blow people away and stuff like that. The Beatles didn't have access to any of that technology, so that makes this all the more amazing how great it does sound. I mean,
and that they're playing as well as they are, and that they're singing on key, because when you can't hear yourself, you can't tell if you're singing on key.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're playing the instrument, I'm like, am I hitting the right notes? I can't tell because I
What's happening here?
hear myself.
Yeah.
Let me look over. I think, these are the right chords. Okay, I guess it's right. And I've experienced that when you can't hear yourself. You don't have a good monitor system because the PA's out in front, pushed towards the audience.
Yeah, and if you don't have monitors, you just can't hear yourself. And you know, it's interesting. There's a couple other notes maybe to talk about as far as this cover image before, and we'll talk a little bit about the packaging. But the album includes a 24-page booklet with an essay by music journalist David Frick, and hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, with its cover art that features a photo of the band shot on August 22nd, 1964 by the Beatles' then U.S. tour manager. So, and this was as they took a chartered flight from Seattle or Tacoma or somewhere in Washington to the first ever concert in Canada. So there's all kinds of history wrapped up, and let's look at the booklet. I mean, it's just beautiful, and just some great pictures, you know, and just a really nice booklet with all kinds of information about the Beatles. You can see that with some really neat pictures, you know, taken at press conferences, and then specific liner notes about their performances. They played a total of 3 shows at the Hollywood Bowl, all sold out in the summer of '64 and then again in the summer of '65. I don't know if they play 2 in '64, how that breaks down, but there's a lot more information in here, and you know, for those of you that have to know everything about these shows and about the Beatles, this is going to be more information for you.
It also has, I should point out, this booklet has the original liner notes from the original vinyl release as well.
Release, exactly.
And so this was like getting close to the end of their touring days, because judging from the tracks from the original songs that they're doing, it sounds like Help was the most recent album, at least, you know, in England. That was the most recent album. And it looks to me like the next album was going to be, and once again, I'm going with the official UK catalog, not the American releases. But the next album would have been, and by the way, the UK releases are now the standard discography that they go with now. The American releases have been kind of, you know, said, well, that was something that happened in America. We didn't really want it that way, but so I'm going with that. But the next album was going to be Beatles for Sale, and I don't see any of the original songs from Beatles for Sale on this here, so I'm assuming this was before they released that album. And so they're pretty much right at the getting close to where the whole tour, the Beatles as a touring unit, was going to stop.
I think they continued through 1966. I know the famous, they had that final concert at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, which and I don't think that one was ever recorded. I know the new Ron Howard movie, that this is kind of an audio companion of that. That has some footage that apparently somebody took with their home movie camera that's included. TJR and I have not yet seen that movie, so when we get that on DVD, I think it comes out in November, we'll do probably an in-depth analysis of that film, because we are looking forward to seeing it. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and we should talk about that, because we wanted to. This film got released in theaters, very limited release.
Very limited release, yeah.
We're in Orange County. There was one theater that was showing it in Orange County for one night, and that's it. And neither of us could make that showing due to other obligations. And we were kind of, I was kind of like, we got Ron Howard directing this film. It's the Beatles, for crying out loud.
I know, exactly.
And, there couldn't be a wider release for this film. Did they not think there would be an audience that would want to go to a theater and see it?
I'm thinking that they screened it theatrically so it would be eligible for Academy Awards and stuff. But I don't know if they just didn't have enough, time to lock up the theaters. There aren't a lot of summer blockbusters anymore right now. The summers, we're into fall now, so I don't know what their reasoning was, but I'm looking forward to seeing the movie, and I've heard really good things about it. Any new footage and new things about the Beatles are exciting, so it would have been nice for us to see it.
I think it's going to be nice to see. What I've read is that it doesn't really shed any new insight, but that it's nice to be able to finally see, this in, with good video quality and the best audio quality possible. And now, of course, the screams are still there. It's there between the songs. You hear it during the songs. It's just, and there are some times when it does kind of rise up and overwhelm when they get a little crazy and then it comes down again. But it's nonstop. Yeah, I do want to stress it is nonstop throughout this recording. They've just found a way to push the instrumentation out more and make it more, improve the clarity of each instrument so you can hear them much better now. And you really can. But keep those screams down to a minimum as much as possible. So but I think like you hit the nail on the head. If you're a Beatles fan, you're going to want to have this, or you already have it by now. If you're thinking about it.
If you've not yet discovered the Beatles, and I know there are some maybe people are just getting into music or they're young and stuff.
I meet them all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, check out some.
Don't start with this.
Don't start here, but check out some of the Beatles' great albums like Sgt. Pepper's or Help or Hard Day's Night or Abbey Road. Check them out. The Beatles, were so groundbreaking on so many levels. With especially the songwriting, but the experiments that they did in the studio, new techniques, the incorporation, incorporating different other styles of music into theirs, like jazz or even Indian music with the sitar. Just so many groundbreaking things that they did. And what I found about is, having listened to the Beatles for basically most of my life, is I continue to hear new things and discover new things every time I put on a Beatles, a song, an album, even a song, and that's quite a testament to their greatness,
And what we're hearing here is them in their early years, and this is when they're still touring, and this is when they're still kind of writing these kind of mostly innocent love songs, very pop sounding, and not to diss them, because even right from the very first song that was ever released, which was the first original song, which was "Love Me Do," there are these inescapable melodies.
Yeah, there are.
You can, there are some people who might.
And interesting things going on with the instrumentation, even though it may seem simplistic. I know, but even that, it's not as simple as it sounds, and it's like there's really great things happening, and just the chemistry and the intelligence of the band members, and what George Martin brought into the mix as well. That it's just a one-of-a-kind magic.
Yeah, but this is still a point where they are just, like I said, it was very at the time. It was still very original sounding, but they were just basically writing pleasant love songs with outstanding melodies. But then, little by little, they begin to experiment more, and so we're kind of hearing them in that early stage. During that early stage, before we get to like Revolver, and Rubber Soul,
right,
where they really start to change and mature, and this is once they stop touring,
right?
And I have to wonder, if they hadn't stopped touring, would we have gotten albums like Rubber Soul?
No, I don't think so. I think it's because they stopped touring and they focused solely on kind of these rich studio songwriting. I think the world, and not just because we were not around at that time to see them, but I think the world is better off today because the Beatles decided to put all their effort in the studio. It's kind of like Brian Wilson when he checked out of playing live with the Beach Boys, and did Pet Sounds or something like that. I mean, I think if he had been on the road and all the stresses with that, and so Pet Sounds wouldn't exist today. So I think there's a lot to be said. I think the Zombies, even Odyssey and Oracle, I think that kind of the same kind of genesis, that they hunkered down in the studio, they rehearsed, they crafted this amazing achievement, and I think there's something to be said for that. I mean, today bands can work on an album many years and then go out and tour. Back then there was economic pressures and other pressures that the bands basically, almost without fail, had to just be out there playing live, and recording very quickly,
And titling it 8 days a week, I think, is very appropriate, because I have read plenty about these early days where their schedules were insane back then. They'd be touring, they'd very quickly go record some more songs, go back on the road again, go back, record, have a couple of days, lock the studio, record some more songs, and they were just pumping out recordings, and just like nobody's business, and then having to go back on the road again. And so the idea of 8 days a week probably is, I would say, was probably pretty apropos for them back then.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're young, even that's got to be very hard when you were as young as they are, but I can imagine that got pretty old pretty quick, and eventually got to be a real burnout, and that's why they, one of the reasons why they stopped.
Of
course, I heard the other reason was because they were frustrated with the fact that when they played live, there was so much screaming that they couldn't even be heard.
Even be heard, yeah,
they couldn't hear
exactly.
themselves.
Yeah. Well, you know, despite all that, and now you know kind of, you know, all the things affiliated with it, but despite all that, this is a great document of the Beatles at that period, and captures the energy of Beatlemania. We didn't even use that phrase, but you know, the screams, the kind of just the excitement that must have happened at those shows. I mean, today we kind of take things for granted. You know, people are taking selfies or doing this. They're into other things. But I get a sense when I listen to this recording, and it's from a couple different shows and stuff. You get the sense like, well, everybody was totally focused on the excitement and the you know, just everything. It was all centered on the band and their music and their persona and stuff. And people, there weren't these other distractions. And boy, in that way, I'm kind of jealous of those young fans and what they got to experience, because you know, rock hasn't been like that probably in a very long time. And this is a great document of those times.
And it may never be again.
Probably won't be.
Yeah. So, on that note.
Yeah, as sad as it may be, but it is a joyous note when you listen to the Beatles there.
And don't try to put a cap on my downer.
Okay.
But anyway, so no. But hey, so have you heard this? Let us know what you think. Give us your thoughts. And we really are interested in hearing your comments, reading your comments. And anyways, my name's TJR. And
my name is Robert Kinsler.
There we go. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, everybody.
See you later, everybody.
Bye.